Hey Tensipedians, whether you're hoping to eventually buy your own place, whether you're already on the property ladder, or if your goal is to become a real estate billionaire, real estate decisions are some of the biggest that we make in our lives. That's because for most of us, the biggest money transactions we make are the roofs over our heads, or for the ones we're going to rent out to other people. And that's why it's important to know how to make the right decisions when it comes to property. Welcome to Tensipedia. If you're not subscribed yet, you're missing out. So let's start raising our real estate IQ and get straight to it with 10 ways to value property. Number 1. Look at the price of similar properties. Yep, you might have thought valuing property was going to be as complicated as rocket science. Well, the most common approach is really simple. And it's something you already do when you're buying anything from electronics to groceries. You compare what you want to buy or sell with similar products on the market with the property. Similar means something that's sold in the last 3 to 6 months, that's about the same size as the property you're looking at now and with the same number of rooms with similar features and about the same condition. And very importantly, in the same neighborhood. If you want to buy or sell a property and want to know what it's worth, find a similar property that's sold recently. And that will give you a good idea. Number 2. Factor in differences that you can calculate. But Tensipedians, isn't that too simple? How am I going to find a property that's the same as the one I'm interested in, or the one I'm trying to sell? If you are about to ask this, you are right. That's why number 1 is usually just the first step. Next, you have to factor in the differences that you can calculate. But what do we mean by differences we can calculate? Let's say you're looking at buying or selling a house. Let's call it to House A, and a similar house in the same neighborhood sold last month for $400,000. We can call that one House B. House A needs structural repairs, but House B was in excellent condition. Here working out the difference is easy. Ask some builders to give you a quote for how much it would cost to repair the House A so it's as good as how to speak. You need to subtract that from the price that the House B sold for. And then you have a decent market value for how to say the opposite is true as well. Let's say House A is nicer than House B, maybe because it's got a good swimming pool. Estimate how much it would cost to install the swimming pool in the grounds of House B, add that to the price House B going for. And then you've got the market values for how to say. Number 3, and try to factor in differences you can't calculate as well. There are differences that are easy to put a price on, like a swimming pool, kitchen upgrades, or repairs that need doing. But what about differences you can't quantify easily? Ones on the plus side, maybe it's close to the shopping district or has an amazing view, or on the minus side, like being next to a busy highway. Well, you can calculate how these will affect the price. And the key is to experience. A beginner in real estate won't be able to tell exactly how much of a city shopping district nearby will add to the value of the property. There is no formula for it because it's going to be different from city to city. But for someone who's always checking out local real estate listings, thinking about what factors are pushing prices up and down, eventually, they'll build up experience and intuition. And they'll be able to make a good calculation too. Number 4, if you're buying to invest, figure out if it's worth the investment. Let's say you've got your sights on an apartment you want to rent out. You need to figure out if it's worth it. Or if you can do better with other properties in the same area. How do you do this? First, you find 2 figures. The first is the amount you'll need to earn from the apartment in a year. If it's already being rented out by the owner, you can ask for how much, if not compare with similar rentals in the area, deduct maintenance costs and taxes. And you'll be left with a figure called the net operating income, or not. Let's repeat that. That's the amount you expect to collect and rent in 1 year. Let's say you've estimated it at $14,000 a year for the apartment you're looking at. And second, you need to think about the capitalization rate, often shortened to the cap rate. That's the percentage of what you'll pay to buy the property that you can expect to make in a year from rent. Find out from realtors what the average cap rate in your area is. Let's say the average is 7%. So let's recap. You can make $14,000 a year and the average return on investment per year in your area is 7%. That means that $14,000 is 7% of the price it's worth for you to pay for the property. How's your math a lock service? Have you figured this out? If you ended up with $200,000 as of the value of the property, you got an A plus $200,000 is the amount it's worth you spending on the property. If the asking price is more than that, you'd be better off looking for another property which will give you a better deal, and if the asking price is less, it looks like you found yourself a bargain. Number 5. Work out how much it would cost to build it from scratch. People in the real estate business call this one replacement approach or the cost approach, and it's pretty much what it says. If the building disappeared overnight, how much would it cost to replace it and build it again from the ground up? First, you need to know the value of the land under the building, then calculate how much it would cost to put the building up all over again, including the cost of materials and labor, adjust them down for aging and damage, and you've got your value. Real estate professionals use this approach to calculate the value of buildings that don't often sell on the market, like schools, hospitals, or government buildings. And it goes on the assumption that a sensible buyer wouldn't pay more for a property than what it would cost to buy the land and build it themselves. Number 6. Ask a real estate agent. Is it all getting a bit complicated? Well, of course, you could just talk to a realtor. No need to make any complicated calculations yourself, just let them do it. And even better, it's free. Well, surprise, there are a few drawbacks. First, if you're selling the property, don't just trust what the realtor tells you. It's well known, they often inflate the value of properties because they want to convince you to put it on the market with them and not with somebody else. They don't expect to get the price they listed it for, they'll aim to drop it after a while. That means if you as a buyer don't trust what realtors tell you either, because there's a good chance the price they're asking for is much more than what it's worth. Also, keep in mind real estate agents aren't obliged to give an accurate valuation to a buyer or a seller. If their evaluation turns out to be wrong, you cannot take them to court. We're not saying all realtors are bad, we're just saying be a little suspicious of what they tell you. Number 7. Ask a real estate appraiser. If you can't always trust realtors, which real estate professionals can you trust? Well, the best chance is a real estate appraiser, also known as a chartered surveyor in some countries. The drawback is it'll cost a few $100s. But in most countries, it's normal to do one of these before closing a property sale with good reason. First, it's a lot more accurate. Real estate appraisers have to be highly qualified and follow strict procedures and show they are completely impartial and not biased toward either the buyer or the seller. Second, they have access to a huge database of property sales the real estate agent doesn't have, and they use these to value the property. Third, they can find hidden problems with the property that the realtor probably didn't even know about because they dig deeper. Now yes, getting an appraisal will cost a few $100s. But if you're about to buy a property for a few $100,000, it's definitely money well spent. Number 8. Ask a property valuation website. You could also ask a computer, or to be more specific, a website that does this property valuation for you. A lot of people do this, but it's definitely not the best way. Yes, computer algorithms are more and more advanced these days. But valuing real estate is one thing they're still not so good at. That's because they rely on public records of recent home sales in the area. This sounds good until you remember that there's a factor of minus points, like structural damage, or plus points like luxury furniture and fittings. Well, there's no public record for those, which means the computer has no way of knowing about that. Besides, when computer programs use local properties that sell as a benchmark, there's the stuff that algorithms can't figure out but that humans would see in a second. Like when there's a wealthy neighborhood close up to a rundown one, anyone walking through would spot the difference in a flash, but the computer program just sees them as being close to each other and so values them the same. Number 9. Listen to what the market tells you. Remember, the market value of property basically means the price the buyer is happy to pay for it and what the seller is willing to sell it for her. That means if you're selling and you're unsure of what the value is, you can just listen to what the market tells you. If you list a property at a certain price and nobody makes an offer, that probably means it's overpriced and you need to go lower. But what if you get multiple offers the day you list it? That means the buyers are a bit too keen and it's probably underpriced. If this happens, put the price up too and see if the buyers start to outbid each other. Number 10. Exploit the fact that people don't know the market. This one's not really about valuing the house, it's about making money from it and how house flippers make a profit when they buy, renovate and sell again. Remember when we talked about making modifications to houses? Basically what we talked about is the following formula: market value of the house before renovations plus the cost of renovations equals market value after renovations. But what would that mean for house flippers? Something like this: house flipper buys a house for $100,000 to the current value, the flipper spends $50,000 renovating it and sells it for $150,000. Simple, right? Except the house flipper has made no profit and they may as well have spent their time surfing Netflix. So here's what really happens. First, the house flipper knows the market better than other people. They buy a rundown house, and somebody who lets their property become rundown probably doesn't know the market and just wants to get rid of it. So the flipper buys a property that's worth $100,000 for $75,000. Next, the flipper spends $50,000 renovating it, and they do such a great job that buyers fall in love with it at first sight. Yep, house flippers know a thing or two about the interior decor as well. This creates an emotional connection with a buyer, which means the buyers are less likely to make a rational market-based decision. Combine that with the house flippers powers of persuasion, and the house sells not for its market value of $150,000 but a cool $200,000. Shall we recap the figures? The flipper buys for $75,000, spends $50,000 renovating it, total costs $125,000, and the house flipper sells it for $200,000. That's a tidy $75,000 profit. It came from the house flipper knowing the market, and the fact that other people like the original seller and the final buyer did not add was that tensepidians. We're at the end of today. What do you think is the most exciting thing about real estate? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And of course, for sticking with us until the end. Develop your real estate IQ. We realize we talked about a lot of things in this video you'll want to be doing when you're buying or selling that sounds straightforward, but aren't, like figuring out how much a mountain view is going to add to the value of a property or how much a busy highway is going to take off of it. Just like with stocks, if you're looking into it for the first time. It's complicated, but dedicate some time every week to follow stocks and you'll develop the knowledge and eventually the instincts that will make you successful. It's the same with property. At first there are questions you have no idea how to answer, but follow real estate listings in your area, read articles online about market trends taking place, read books about the theory, and eventually, you'll go from feeling lost to having your finger on the pulse when it comes to property. Then that means you've raised your real estate IQ. You can talk about it confidently, and when it comes to making any kind of real estate decision, you are primed for success.